2, 1. All right, that was Mariah Carey, Shake It Off. So at one point, California was among the most conservative states in the country. It was reliably Republican. It at one point had open carry laws until a bunch of Black Panthers showed up at the State House with guns, and then Ronald Reagan and the NRA wrote them off for that. It was like, you niggas can't have guns like that now. It had both Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, followed by Ronald Reagan, 2 conservative presidents. It also enacted some very conservative laws. It had the three strikes law, which spread across the country, which sent young black men and young black and brown men to prison for long times. It added their, if they'd ever done a crime, it made it all kind of concurrent, and you could go to jail. I remember the first person who actually was the victim of that law, went to jail for stealing a piece at Redondo Beach. It also, 209 and 208, Proposition 209 and 211, cracked down on immigration, and also took affirmative action as one of the things you could use to have people go to school. So it was very, very conservative. And then something started to happen. There started to be a boom in the Latino and Asian and black population. And as the population boomed, California shifted and started to change. As a matter of fact, it was instrumental in legalizing marijuana. It also, now has no bail policies. It leads the nation in climate change, the LGBTQ community. And recently, when Gavin Newsom got through recall, he passed laws that gave women aid for postpartum blues and doulas and stuff like that. It passed a law that made it impossible for if you've been fired as a police officer to get your job back. It took no bail policies. It took the minimum of nonviolent offenses in prison. It also has done things in terms of climate change, but it also did something very, very interesting. It gave back a piece of valuable land to a black family that it was taken from 100 years ago, the Bruce family. Let me ask you an honest question. Do you actually think that had Larry Elder won, those things would be happening? Do you honestly think that we would see the progression forward that we see if Larry Elder had won? Case in point, Texas, a very fast-growing state, has done the opposite. Instead of expanding votes to, like California is now mandated that they send a ballot out to every single Californian so you can mail your ballot in. Texas has a restricted voting. California has made it easier for women to control their bodies. Texas has made it harder. California has made it harder for police officers who have been disciplined to get their job back. Texas said that the Texas bordermen, the U.S. Border Patrol, who were lassoing Haitians, if they got fired, could get a job at Texas. Do you think Texas would give Bob Jones land back at Lake Grapevine? Do you think that would happen? It would not. And what happened to California is happening to Texas. There's going to be a large influx of younger voters, more progressive voters, and it will change. As a matter of fact, I'd say Texas is about 15 years behind what California was at that time. One time very conservative. They have these influx of attitudes and people changing. They change the demographic, and it changes. When people tell you things like votes don't matter, when people tell you they're all the same, do you think that any of these things that are going to have a direct impact on the quality of life for a lot of black and brown people, do you think they happen if Larry Elder is elected governor of the governor of California? Do you think that some of the things that we're seeing, we would see? And if you like the things that you see, then you understand that your participation is important. If you don't, Texas is fine. Texas is making it harder. Texas is going backward. California is going forward. You can tell me all you want about state taxes and all that kind of stuff, but is it worth letting them lead us backward? Backward. They're regressing. They're making it harder to vote, making it harder for women to control their body, making it harder for police to be that way. Because when you tell me that things like your vote doesn't matter, tell me if Larry Elder's in office right now, do you think that black family gets their beach back? Do you think that we take off the mandatory sentencing for nonviolent crimes? Do you think that women get the extra help that they need after childbirth? I would submit to you, no. We have to decide one thing. There are two states at play, and I think they're the most prominent states in the country. One is California, one is Texas. But one seems to want to be the Flintstones, and the other wants to be the Jetsons. If you want to go forward, there are things you have to do. One is trying to be mired in the past, and one is trying to go forward. And let me submit this to you. Forward is the only way black and brown people have. We've seen what backward looks like. We've seen what it has done. And when people try to make it harder to vote, or harder to control your body, or harder to come there, or harder to live, they're telling you what they want. Forward is the only way forward. One way is the abyss and the other is the light, and the only way we can decide which is which is if everybody starts to decide how they participate. If you want to see some of the things you want to see, that requires forward movement, and forward movement requires changing the electorate, and changing the electorate means changing the mentality, the laws, and the ethos of those states. And I think that that's what they're afraid of happening in Texas and Georgia. They're a little ways away from California. You let a few more black, brown, and Asian people move there. And then maybe you'll get some of your land back. And maybe you'll see some of the things you want to see happen. That's a little note from the GED section. We've got a jazz report coming up in 15 minutes. It's the D.L. Hughley Show.